Hello, my name is Sarah Han-Sanoko, and welcome to Classic Mistake, the podcast that celebrates the more human side of classical music, in other words, fails. Our guest today is the Canadian conductor and violinist Janna Saylor. In 2016, Janna founded the Vancouver-based Allegra Chamber Orchestra, one of the only all-female identifying classical orchestras in the world. An ensemble dedicated to creating opportunities for women and minorities in the music industry with a mandate of social action through music. To see a snapshot of all the amazing things Janna has done so far in her career, please visit her website at jannasaylor.com. First off, Janna tells us about one of her first experiences playing in an opera orchestra.
So I'm a violinist and conductor, and early on in my career, I was a grad student at University of British Columbia. And, being the eager beaver I was, I went around and, played for all the orchestras to get on their sub lists. And so I played for Vancouver Opera, which was, my dream job.
Okay.
And, months went by and, after I played my audition, they were like, "Yeah, don't call us. We'll call you," kind of
Okay.
kind of situation.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I was inexperienced and very green, but very keen. And then just out of the blue, one day, I got called. I got called to play Salome.
Okay.
And they were already in rehearsals. I'm not sure what exactly happened. Someone got injured or ill, and the Vancouver Symphony was on tour, and so there was basically no other violinists in Vancouver except for me, apparently. So I got called, thrown in while they were, already in production, already in rehearsals, well into rehearsals. I get my part, and the part is just black. It's just a tremendously challenging violin part. Still one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. And it's opera. I'd only played a few operas, and they were more run-of-the-mill, Mozart and Puccini, much more user-friendly,
right.
Not Strauss.
Okay.
So, anyways, I'm madly practicing just every minute of the day, and rookie mistake, I didn't look up what this opera was about. I had no idea. I was just panic practicing.
Yeah, totally.
And so, learn from me. Always know what is actually going on in the production you're playing in. And so anyways, we get into tech rehearsals, we're in the pit, and we're playing away, and for those of you who, as I was not familiar with Salome, it's about the biblical story of this woman who requests the head of John the Baptist, and she dances the dance of the seven veils to seduce her stepfather, gross, into making this decision, and beheads John the Baptist and gives it to her on a platter. So anyways, spoiler alert, that's how the opera ends. And as mentioned, I knew none of this. And we're in the pit. We're playing away. It's getting to be the final scene of the opera, which is, she's done her striptease. She's danced her dance of the seven veils, and now she has the head of John the Baptist. And the makeup department had just outdone themselves with this disgusting head that, I still had the eyes were rolling around, and there were things just hanging down from the neck, and it was covered in blood. And then she was this terrifying Russian soprano that just stormed around backstage and terrified everybody anyway. And she was just so in character. And, anyways, what she does with this head is she basically, she makes out with it, and she rubs it all over her naked body.
Okay.
And I'm totally innocent here. I had no idea what was going on. And I'm playing away like crazy. There's a lighting change, and it kind of takes me by surprise. There's this shadow kind of cast, and I look up, and this woman is on the very edge of the stage holding this bloody head covered in blood, completely naked. And I kind of look out of the corner of my eye, and I screamed. I screamed, and the conductor stops. He's like, he was a very lovely conductor. I love him. He's my favorite. He will always be my favorite conductor in the world. He stops. He says, is everyone okay? What's going on? Is everyone all right? And my stand partner looks at me like it's the new kid that doesn't know how opera works. Yes. And I was just like, oh my God. And so anyways, we continue. We finish the last page or so of the opera, which is all we had left. And I ran out of the pit and I ran away. And I was expecting them to phone me and just fire me and to never work again. And I was like, well, that was the end of that. And what the fuck was that? Anyways.
So embarrassing.
So horrible. And and I've never really lived that down. I went on to play many seasons with Vancouver Opera, but I'm teased about it until this day. That was about 10 years ago. But anyways, needless to say, I went home and studied up on Salome and practiced even more. And we came back the next day for the next tech. They had totally restaged it, so it was far away from me. There was we won't scare any violinists. Yeah. This was before they had a cover over half the pit. Which probably because of maybe situations like that, I'd like to think maybe I had something to do with that. But no, there's a cover over the pit, so we don't have to look at naked Russian sopranos with blood all over them.
Well, I mean, kudos to the tech staff. I mean, that was obviously extremely effective.
Problem.
Makeup and staging.
Yeah, yes. Incredible. Yeah.
Awesome.
We did this beautiful series of concerts called New Music in New Places through the Canadian Music Centre. And so we played in all kinds of crazy places, and the audiences loved it. So, for example, a group of percussionists did shows in a mine, down a mine shaft, and they, used the elements around them to, as well as their instruments and the natural acoustics of the space. And so that was kind of what the series was all about. And then we also played, we played in a graveyard, and we had to have our music memorized. And our flautist was a wonderful flautist, but she'd had kind of a whole bunch of things going on, and so she just couldn't get this one really complex piece memorized. And so it was a walking concert, and so my job was to I wore a long black coat, in kind of in keeping with the context of the place, and they taped her music to my back, and I just walked very slowly in front of her, and we made a procession, we made it a thing, we made it performance art, and she just followed me along, and she'd be like, someone I'd go too fast or stumble, she'd be like, So it was just ridiculous things like that. And then one more concert that we did was a little bit more traditional in that it was at a winery in Kelowna. And so we did this, once again, kind of an interactive traveling concert where, they would start at the audience would start in the tasting room and make their way down onto the floor where the pressing and everything happened, which was very charming, except in my dressing room, which was just kind of a little closet, it was crawling with mice, which I only discovered once I was settled in there with, and it was quite a formal, special event, so I was wearing a long gown with a bit of a train, and so when my colleagues were on stage, I was perched up on top of this bench, just trying to make sure no part of my dress or me touched the floor, which was crawling with mice. And then as soon as it was my turn, I would literally jump off the bench and run on stage, which was hopefully mouse free. And so anyways, I'd gotten through most of the concert like this until I got to this. It was just myself and the pianist I was playing. I was premiering, of course. Of course, it was a premiere. Yeah. A beautiful sonata by a local composer, and my dress starts to rustle and of course, there's a mouse running around under my train, just going. Oh my god! And oh my god! And I was just biting my lips so hard.
Did you get through it?
I got through it, and my colleagues could tell exactly what was. They were watching from the back of the stage, and they could see like the tears like streaming down. People in the audience thought I was just so moved by my own playing that I was like just making myself cry. I was actually just like, I'm trying not to like lose my goddamn mind because there was a mouse under my dress for like the entire time.
Just like, don't touch my feet.
Exactly.
Like, don't poop on my dress.
And they were like, oh my God, how's she gonna get through this? And then I literally like, I don't think I even bowed. I think I just ran away when I was done. I was like, I'm out of here.
She's just so moved she can't even stand for the bow.
Yeah. And the composer was like, oh, that was so beautiful. It was such a moving performance. I was like, I don't even remember it.
Oh, that's brutal. The only comparable thing when I was in NYO, National Youth Orchestra, we went and did a tour of Japan and Hong Kong, and the hall we were at in Hong Kong had cockroaches. Yeah, and they were crawling across the stage as we were performing, and you just same kind of thing. It didn't come close enough. It's not quite as epic as the mouse in the dress, but yeah, crawling across the stage, and we had these like little flimsy, like travel stands, and it was just one of I turned. We were playing Daphnis and Chloe, and I just like turned one of my pages, and the whole stand just like went crashing down, and that was another one of those fun performances. Yeah, so luckily some nice violinists picked it up for me and set the music ball back up.
There's lots of us. We're disposable. There's only one of you.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, critters and music. It's not. Yeah, maybe we should create a series.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes,
that's true.
Bring some pets.
So early on, when I'd started Allegra, which is my all-female identifying orchestra, we got this call from a performance artist that is like mixed multimedia, like visual art and dance, electronics, vocals, songwriting, pretty much everything. This woman did all the things, all at once. And the show was called Virtual Womb. And the whole idea was that the audience entered through a virtual vagina, which she had made out of different types of fabric and kind of mixed media. And that, it was kind of like an incubator for new ideas, and I think that's what it was. Yeah.
A birthing
of, yes. And then, we all enter into this kind of co-creating state, and then, then we leave through the vagina as we came in. Transformed.
Reborn.
Presumably. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so I remember, so I'd already, she because, we were all female. I presume she contacted us because we were all female orchestra. And, we had some interesting, things align, of course, other than just being women and having vaginas.
Right.
Of our own.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we signed on to this, and also note to self early on, I didn't quite get all the details, and so I remember having to explain this at our first kind of rehearsal what was going to go down to my players that were like, sorry, what? Yeah. And actually, like, the show, like, once you kind of got past that part, it was a really thoughtful, really interesting, curated show. Since she was this woman is a really, amazing thinker and creator. But yeah, it did take a few, some conversation, and fortunately, my players are up for anything and very open-minded.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, not everyone would go along with that or feel comfortable with
right.
it, and that's totally fair. Yeah. That's totally fair. But anyways, that was that was definitely an unusual request. When I first started playing weddings, I pretty much refuse to play weddings now, unless it's like a very, very dear friend.
Yes.
Must be very dear.
Yes.
Because they are so oddly stressful. And, you know, you want it to be good for these people. It's a really significant day in their life. But you know, I was playing a very small, very low budget wedding. There's nothing wrong with budget weddings. Nothing wrong with budget weddings. But this was like budget in like trailer park kind of way.
Okay.
And so they, first of all, they just hired one solo violinist, which is tricky. So that's tricky
Totally.
to play. There's only, they asked me to play Pachelbel's canon. And I was like, well, it's a canon.
Right.
So, like, you gotta, like,
You'll hear the
kinda
melody,
need the
but-
ground bass, but
Yeah.
I can make something that sounds a little Pachelbel canon-ish.
Yeah.
But anyway, so once I'd played, you know, that for, I think it was the bridesmaids, and everything was kind of in a funny, weird order. And then they were like, okay, so once you play that, just stop. And then we have our own music that we're going to insert. And I was like, oh, okay, no problem.
Right.
So I played Pachelbel canon-ish, and then I stopped. And then somebody with a ghetto blaster just pressed a button and played Here Come the Men in Black, and then all the groomsmen walked down.
Okay.
And that was, yeah, and that, so,
To each their own.
yeah, that's what I mean, like trailer park style.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I actually probably could have played something that sounded like Men in Black on the violin.
Well,
but
totally. That's
better than Pachelbel's canon, probably.
Yeah.
Anyway, ironically. But yeah, there's all kinds of things where, like, you know, brides show up hours and hours, and we're just making stuff up and to fill the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
And then I actually had one wedding which was really interesting. They wanted us, I was with my harp and violin duo, and they wanted all video game music.
Okay.
So we transcribed all video game music, and that was actually really difficult.
Yes. I was going to say that's a lot of work.
we had to charge them a lot of money because it was hours and hours.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful, and you know, they were hardcore gamers and loved it.
Yeah.
So
For violin and harp.
for violin
you know?
and harp, video game music. I used to compete a lot, and I had an instrument that was on loan, and it was new to me. It was a beautiful instrument, quality instrument, but had a couple little funny issues, and sometimes with like tension, and then also like the fine tuners, like where the strings are anchored, particularly the E string anchor, and so sometimes it would just randomly snap on me, and we had no idea why. Like I said, it was a weird tension issue on the instrument, and so when I ended up you know, having some work done on it. But anyways, it was hit and miss, and I was playing and in a competition, and I had my E string break in a really strange way. And it snapped off and went flying and landed in the judge's water jug. So it was pretty spectacular. And it was like a piece, like there was no, you know, some things you can like fake on the violin until you like make it. But there was no, like, this piece was literally all on the E string. So it was just over.
Yeah, it was over.
But the funniest thing was just watching like the judge like kind of like peer over his paper and his glasses and like kind of like fish it out and just like kind of toss it on the floor, and I was like, oh my god. Okay. I was like, I'll just go.
Like, yeah, do that if you tried. Like
Yeah.
that.
And I've never had an E string like break like that and fly out. Usually it snaps in your face.
Okay.
But like I said, this was some weird kind of tension issue, and it broke on both ends.
Okay.
And
just went
like
flying.
and flying that way. And yeah.
Well, I'm sure they remember you.
Yeah, they would.
Regardless of maybe not winning the competition.
I really didn't. No,
Yeah,
I really
no.
didn't win. It was interesting. I never struggled with it until a certain point, and until I was in like, you know, struggling through my master's and my undergrad. Then I started to, I don't know what it was, just my brain changing or being older or more stressed or more full. Then all of a sudden I started like really, really struggling with memory. And I remember once again in a competition, and I was playing Barber violin concerto, and the last movement it's really hard to memorize anyway. It's just running 16ths the whole time, and like, you know, no really distinguishable patterns, and it just goes on and on and on. And I think I probably added like a whole, like, and thankfully it was my mom who was accompanying me on the piano, and so she kind of knew my little weirdness, about my little weird ways, and I think I added like several lines, and she just kind of vamped underneath me until I like found my way out of this little tunnel that I had dug myself into, and like ended the frickin' piece. So, you know, just like having a good piano, pianist, a good support system that like knows you well.
For you. The orchestra wouldn't have been able to vamp for you, unfortunately.
No, because it's just, yeah, and it was just a wild movement, and you can just get turned around so bad, and you're like, how do I get out of this vortex of notes?
Well, good for you. You kept going. I find that hard. Yeah.
I always used to get horrible hiccups. Horrible. And I get ask my husband, it's like the worst, most ridiculous, like, I sound like a seal when I get the hiccups, and they're like really jarring. Like there's nothing. So for a while, I think it was like I don't know, it must have been a nervous thing, but I would get the worst hiccups. Okay. Like until the minute I would go on stage, I would just like drive myself crazy and everybody backstage and completely nuts. And then I'd walk on stage and they'd go away.
Weird.
So weird.
Yeah.
But I was always just like, people would be really concerned. It's like, you're going to get this under control, right? I was like, yeah, no problem. I got this. Well, getting back to opera, because there's so, I remember we did West Side Story, which is a little bit of a stretch for an opera company, sometimes at the best of times. But yeah, once again, they didn't have the cover on the pit, and of course, first scene, opening night, they're like running around with a ball, bouncing a ball on stage. It lands on the xylophone, explodes the xylophone. Oh no! And it was like the best sound. It was like the craziest sound of like the xylophone exploding. It was actually the best, and then swearing and all kinds of things that followed. It was actually one of my favorite moments ever. I just had to stop playing and just enjoy it for a minute, because it was just.
You know, it's kind of shocking that it's only been in recent years that they cover the pit.
Really, truly.
Yeah, it's like hundreds of years of just who knows what has landed on
on musicians. Unsuspecting. Oh, I have another opera story. Okay. So we were playing once again Vancouver Opera. We were doing Lucia de Lammermoor, and I don't know, this right from the beginning, there was something just really off with this production. Like, it was cursed. It was like the Scottish play, but it was like the opera version. Yeah. And it started as soon as we moved into the hall. So the set was very minimalist. It was two just high walls that went all the way up that, you know, met in a kind of a V shape, and they used it for projections and whatever. And for whatever reason, they were doing a piano tech, and those walls collapsed. Okay. And like, it would have killed someone if it would have. And it was just seconds before the chorus was supposed to make an entry. Anyways, these two huge walls weren't anchored properly or something. They fell down, smashed all of the props. All of them, sent them flying into the pit. Thankfully, it was only the pianist down there, and she was okay. Okay.
Talk about liability, my God.
Oh, right? Yeah. And then opening night, they hadn't been able to replace all the props. It was a super minimalist production. They're just like a bed and a chair, and it was just
miming.
Random things. We'll just pretend it's just pretendsies for the first one. So that happened the first time, and then throughout the run, one of the lead tenor kept having like vocal issues, and he was sick, but he could still sing, but he couldn't sing like in his high register, so they kept giving us little cuts, like, okay, so every night, we've never rehearsed it, but he was like, okay, here, we jump from here to here, because he can't sing this, and he has these notes again, so we can play this. It was wild. Like, every night, it was just like whack-a-mole down there. It was just like crazy. Wild.
Like, isn't that the point of an understudy, so that...
Exactly. I think it was the understudy. Oh. I think that was the other thing, is like the top guy was sick, and then the understudy had all these weird issues. But then we were almost through the run. We were just like, oh my God. And there was other like just stupid little things that went on. I can't quite remember. But it was the closing night and we were like, oh my God, okay, let's just finish this show.
Get through this thing, yeah.
And so after intermission, it opens on like a party scene. And so the curtain is down and the curtain goes up and everybody's like, ah, you know how they do in opera.
Yes.
And so there apparently, like, we can't quite see everything that's going on, but there was a chair that was placed right at the front of the stage, and apparently it got, like, hooked onto the hem of the curtain. And this soprano was sitting on it. And we start playing, like, all happy music. The curtain starts going up. And then we hear this crash because, like, the curtain's gone up and it's gone up and it's tipped this woman off her chair and the chair kept going.
Oh my God.
It kept going up and up and up. And then it got about, and we could hear something was going on in the chorus because we could hear them all going, oh, like the sound just changed because they were all like watching this chair go up. And then it got like halfway up and then the curtain ripped. It goes, and the chair came crashing down, and then we got like covered in like years of nasty curtain dust. We were just like, oh, like we were like, what are they doing the smoke over? Like, what is going on? And there was this big crash, and the chorus just stopped for a second, and then the orchestra just kept going like, and it was just like one of the most bizarre experiences ever. And this woman was just like, what just happened? Like this, like, it was just like, it was a suitable end to like a disastrous run. But I just feel like the things that stick with me is like the sound of the chorus, like singing while they're like watching it go up, and then the crash, and then this dead silence from everybody, and then we just kept going. We're like, never mind. And like this ripped curtain was just like, like just dangling, and then they had to like stop the show. I don't know what they did. I think they brought down the curtain, like chopped it off and put it back up, and like off we went again. It's like, you know, stupid music. So anyway.
Oh, that's funny.
Now every time I just see like those thick red velvet stage curtains, I'm just like, those are so disgusting.
It's like 30 years of dust mites, just like...
They just don't clean them, man.
Yeah. I mean, how do you, I guess, but ugh.
Only once in my life have I had like a really bad like sheet music mishap, but it was that same concert actually in the at the winery where just whatever, of course I was playing this stupid hard piece and I had really quick page turns, and of course my pages got epically stuck together and I actually had to stop.
Yeah.
I actually had to stop, and that's, you know, that rarely happens, but then it was fortunately it wasn't too far into the movement, and so we just fixed it up, and then we started the movement again. And actually, the composer was thrilled. He's like, I got more airtime than any of the other composers because you played my piece twice.
So true. There you go. At least he had a positive attitude about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of, but and then at that same concert, we it was all music by Canadian composers, newly composed works and things. So it was very exciting. But, you know, composers don't always, you know, make it super user-friendly to work with their music and or facilitate page turns. Right. So we were playing in this, both the cellist and I, we were in this piano trio playing this. It was an amazing piano trio, but so busy and no place to turn pages. And so we ended up having, like, this epically long string of pages that we just kind of had to like creep along and like and read. Yeah. And then this particular concert happened. It was absolutely packed. It was over capacity, and we had people literally sitting almost right next to us.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
And so we had a couple like extra keeners that we were like, hey, like, can you just turn my page?
Yeah.
And so they did, and they loved it. And we were just like, now.
They became part of the show.
They became part of the show, and they loved it. And so actually that's a trick that Donovan and I have used a couple times when we do our violin duo things. We ask for volunteers in advance.
Yeah.
And because same thing, when you're playing violin, you can't
You
turn
don't
a
have
page.
any hands, yeah.
And so actually that's something that we've made as part of our shows. When we just have tricky page turns, we'll be like, well, we'll just ask someone.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it
usually
could go
love it.
horribly wrong, but it's
Yeah.
you never know.
And it can.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We live on the edge.
Yep.
It's extreme recitaling.
I'm sure it'll be like a thing where we look back and laugh, like, you know, the first computer printers or like tape decks or something, you know. It's like sheet music will be this thing that's just this hilarious.
Like, what was that?
Yeah, exactly. Our grandchildren will be like, what? You used paper?
Yeah.
To
Just like we look
perform?
at like handwritten
What?
parts.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
you didn't put them in a computer.
Yeah, what?
Like, someone had to hand copy
Yeah.
those? What?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Once again, an opera story. I mean, I spent 8 seasons, so playing opera. So I was playing a John Astasio opera, Lillian Alling, which is a very interesting, intriguing piece written about a woman, a real woman, a true story of an immigrant woman who trekked across BC and her adventures and the places that she visited, and she's become kind of a mythical figure in some northern BC communities, and so Vancouver Opera had commissioned it, and it was very exciting. You know, we'd workshopped it and worked with the composer, and it was really wonderful. And so I'm at the back of the first violins in my spot, and there's this one segment that says like backstage solo, but I didn't think anything of it. I was like, of course that's going to be like a concertmaster solo,
Right,
like,
yeah.
and once again, I'm in like my first or second year of playing opera, don't know how backstage solos work, and so anyways, we're playing along, and then we get to this segment for the first time in rehearsal, this backstage solo, and to my surprise, my stand partner starts playing it, and that's just how it works. Like in a pit, the person who's at the back of the section,
farthest away.
yeah,
kind of thing.
closest to the door, just runs out and plays the solo.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, and but didn't think anything of it, didn't learn the solo. The next day I come to rehearsal, my stamp partner's on crutches.
Oh no.
She'd broken her ankle the night before.
Oh jeez.
And could no longer like get out of the pit. And so they're like, okay, so you play the backstage solo now. I was like, oh no. And it was John Astasio writing. I love John Astasio. Super hard.
Yes.
Super hard. Violin concerto backstage. And it was a fiddle solo, but it was like black with flats, and that's like death for violin players.
Okay.
It's so hard, and because I had to go so fast, all these double stops, and so many accidentals, and so I get this memo at the beginning of rehearsal. Oh, like, by the way, and so like, you know, in the few minutes that I have there to warm up, I'm like sweating through this solo. I was like, oh my god, and John Astasio, I didn't know what he looked like.
Okay.
I hadn't met him.
Yeah.
And I'm just sweating through it. And he comes up and he was like, oh, that sounds really good. I was like, who the hell wrote this? This does not work on the violin. Like, I'm going to have, like, how, like, and I turn around and it's him. And I was like, oh, but it sounds really good. I'm like, it's going to be great. I'm sure it's like, and he was like, oh, okay. Like, he was really gracious. And I was like, I'm just really stressed out right now. I just found out I have to play this, and I was like,
in mouth, trying to take it out.
I was just like, because I just heard he just came up behind me, and I didn't see him, and I like, I'd never met him in person, but I, like, you know, I'd seen pictures of him, and then I was like, this is the worst day of my life. Like, once again, I'm going to get fired, like, for, like, telling off the composer of the commissioned opera and being like, I can't play your fucking piece. Yeah. Like, who wrote this? Doesn't he know how a violin works?
How did it go? Did you pull it off?
Yes, it was fine.
Good.
But it was wild because like his orchestral parts are really, really difficult. And we had something like an 8-part divisi in the violins, and so I had to play right until the last minute to make sure all the parts were covered. And then I had to run backstage in this old auditorium where it's just like, like it's like Mario and in the underworld back there to like get up to like out of the pit and like onto the stage, where I had to like play this backstage solo. So it was myself and like one of the keyboard players, and she would go in front of me because it was a huge cast, and she would just like have her arms out like this because I had my violin, and so I just and there was just crowds and crowds of people like all trying to get on and off stage and do their thing. And she would be like, "Get out of the way!" And we just do our little run, like all the way, like all the way up to the because and it wasn't just that we were on stage; we were up on like the top, like of the set as well. So once you got on stage, you still had a little bit of a run up the stairs to go and like play in this like house band. And so I would get there, and I was so out of breath. Yeah. And I would just have to, like, I'd get there in the nick of time. I'd have a couple measures, and the conductor, like, everybody else in the banda was just, like, sitting there, like, chilling. And the conductor would be like, "Hey." And then we'd just, like, "Okay." And I'd, like, play this, like, really hard, like, 3-page solo. And which is a lot in violin world. Yeah. And so what I would do, actually, to prepare for that was I'd skip rope at home. I'd jump rope in my tiny apartment, go bam, 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 bam for my downstairs neighbors, and then grab my violin and play it.
Oh my God.
So that's how I prepared. But once I figured out, like, I was like, okay, I have to stress myself out to the max. Yeah. And then make myself play this. Wow. And actually that was a trick that I used for other things, like for auditions and competitions, is to jump rope and like get my heart rate really, really high, get myself in that heightened state of like feeling stressed out, and then have to actually practice getting my heart rate down and playing, or just playing regardless.
Yeah, that's really smart.
So, yeah.
Crazy. Anyways. Meanwhile, they probably could have just hired
they probably just could have hired another violinist
who was there
who just sat backstage and chilled and like played.
But whatever.
Yeah.
Hope you got doubling or something.
I think I did. I did, but I don't. But I was just like, we bonded over like the keyboard player and I over our little runs. She'd be like, "Get out!
Musicians coming through!
Delicate instrument!"
Yeah. Thank you so much, Janna, for sharing your awesome stories with us. I hope everybody listening enjoyed as much as I did. You could hear me laughing a lot. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss our next episode. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.